Schwarzenegger, I've read that you guys actually hated each other for a while.
Well, we were very competitive. Yeah, I think hate's a good word. It is. Come on.
Behind the legend of Sylvester Stallone, the iron-toothed fighter who brought the world Rocky, Rambo, and The Expendables, lies a little-known story. A story not of victories in the ring or on the battlefield, but of grudges, betrayals, and clashes so fierce that they sometimes make his on-screen battles seem trivial. Over the years, Stallone has quietly built up a list of Hollywood names he could never forgive. 6 actors, 6 stories of ego, ambition, and broken trust. Watch the full video to discover the full story. And at the top of that list is Richard Gere. The year was 1974, on the modest set of The Lords of Flatbush. Both men were young, hungry, and desperate to make their mark, but their approaches could not have been more different. Stallone was raw instinct, channeling his hardscrabble Hell's Kitchen upbringing into every line, every gesture. Gere, meanwhile, was polished, cerebral, the method actor dissecting every beat as though it were Shakespeare. It was only a matter of time before they collided. That collision came in the form of something almost laughably small, a sandwich. Crammed together in a car for a tense scene, Stallone sat with a hot dog in hand while Gere gnawed on a greasy chicken sandwich drowning in mustard. Stallone, always direct, warned him, "That thing is going to drip all over the place." Gere brushed him off, coolly muttering, "Don't worry about it." But Stallone, already simmering, pressed the point, "If it gets on my pants, you're going to know about it." And then, the inevitable, mustard everywhere. Clothes ruined, tempers ignited, and a friendship that never stood a chance went up in flames. What began as a clash of styles turned into open hostility. The tension grew so unbearable that Gere was eventually fired from the film, replaced by Perry King. For Stallone, the stain wasn't just on his pants, it was on a relationship that never recovered. From that day on,
the official
Stallone
line
and
was
Gere became
creative
Hollywood
differences,
rivals, their animosity whispered about for decades. And while both men went on to become icons in their own right, the chicken sandwich incident became legend, a symbol of 2 egos that could never share the same screen again. The moment the mustard splattered across Sylvester Stallone's thigh, everything snapped. Without hesitation, he drove his elbow into Richard Gere's head and shoved him out of the car. The set froze in stunned silence. The director, caught between 2 rising stars, had no real choice: keep both and watch the production implode, or cut one loose. In the end, Gere was gone. The official excuse? Creative differences. But everyone on set knew the truth: Stallone had won. Years later, Stallone himself admitted bluntly, Richard was given his walking papers, and to this day, he seriously dislikes me. For Gere, the humiliation wasn't about losing a role. It was about losing it over a petty accident and Stallone's volcanic temper. Gossip swirled through Hollywood, cementing Stallone as the man who ruled his sets with iron fists and elbows. But the feud didn't stop there. Stallone later revealed that Gere suspected him of spreading one of Hollywood's nastiest urban legends, the infamous gerbil rumor. "He even thinks I started it," Stallone once said. Not true, but that's the rumor. Gere never confirmed it, but his silence only added fuel to the fire. The bad blood resurfaced years later in one of the most bizarre settings imaginable, a dinner party hosted by Elton John, with Princess Diana as guest of honor. According to Elton, the tension was palpable when Stallone noticed Diana deep in conversation with Gere. Furious, he reportedly muttered, "I wouldn't have bothered turning up if I'd known Prince F***ing Charming was going to be here." Things escalated, voices rose, and the two nearly came to blows until Diana herself smoothed the situation over. Stallone stormed out, tossing one final line over his shoulder: "If I'd wanted her, I would have taken her." Decades have passed, but the rift remains. Both men achieved superstardom, but the stain of that mustard, that moment in a cramped car, marked the beginning of a rivalry that never healed. And then came number 2, Eddie Murphy. In the neon glow of the late 1980s, Stallone and Murphy seemed unstoppable. Stallone was the muscle-bound king of action with Rocky and Rambo, while Murphy ruled comedy with Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America. What made their connection remarkable was that, unlike most Hollywood rivalries, theirs began with genuine warmth. They laughed together, celebrated together, and built a friendship that seemed strong enough to withstand the brutal currents of fame. By 1987, the bond between Sylvester Stallone and Eddie Murphy unraveled, and the spark that lit the fire was Beverly Hills Cop 2. Stallone's then-wife, Brigitte Nielsen, had landed a role in the blockbuster. To Stallone, that should have made her untouchable. But Hollywood sets are strange places: long hours, high energy, blurred lines. Soon, people began noticing a certain closeness between Murphy and Nielsen. A laugh here, a late-night chat there, and suddenly whispers took on a life of their own. Rumors spread like wildfire, mutating from casual observations into screaming tabloid headlines. For Stallone, perception mattered more than proof. Night after night, he watched his wife's name linked to his friend, and each mention cut deeper than the last. It wasn't just humiliation, it was betrayal written in bold ink across every gossip column. Stallone didn't play the Hollywood game. No lawyers, no PR spin. Instead, he grabbed the phone and dialed Murphy himself. The confrontation was direct, raw, and explosive. Stallone, furious and wounded, demanded answers. "You slept with my wife." Murphy would later recount the call in a 1989 Rolling Stone interview. He remembered the intensity, the accusation, and the pressure. But his response was unwavering. "I told him straight, no, man. I didn't sleep with your wife. Did I ever want to? No. She wasn't my type. She was married, and married to someone who was my friend. I'm not that guy." Yet, denial didn't heal the fracture. Stallone's marriage to Nielsen was already fragile, and once doubt creeps in, it rarely leaves. Whether the rumors were baseless or not, Stallone couldn't silence the gnawing suspicion. Something between him and Murphy had broken, and no phone call could put it back together. By 1982, Sylvester Stallone was no longer just a breakout star. He was the face of a movement, the man who turned Rocky into a cultural anthem and was now ready to reshape Hollywood again with First Blood. For Stallone, this wasn't just another action script. It was a personal mission, a story about the wounds of Vietnam, the struggles of forgotten soldiers, and the raw edge of survival. Every frame mattered to him, every line of dialogue carried weight. He had fought too hard for creative control to let anyone rewrite his vision. Enter Kirk Douglas, one of Hollywood's towering legends, a man who had carved his name into history with Spartacus and Paths of Glory. When Douglas expressed interest in playing Colonel Sam Troutman, Rambo's former commander, it seemed like destiny. The idea of an old-school giant standing opposite Hollywood's hottest new star promised cinematic fireworks. At least, on paper. The reality was something else entirely. From the moment Douglas arrived, he made it clear he wasn't just there to act, he wanted to reshape the film. He saw Troutman not as a mentor, but as the story's savior. In Douglas's mind, the film should end with Troutman shooting Rambo dead, a moral resolution to tie up the chaos. To Stallone, that was sacrilege. This wasn't Troutman's story. It was Rambo's. Killing him wasn't just a rewrite, it was a betrayal of the entire message. Tensions flared quickly. Stallone, fiercely protective of his creation, refused to bend. Douglas, used to commanding respect on any set, dug in harder. Their clashes grew so intense that it became clear both couldn't stay. The choice had to be made, and Stallone, now powerful enough to stand his ground, made sure it wasn't him who walked away. Douglas was gone, replaced by Richard Crenna, who slipped into the role seamlessly and helped create the Rambo-Troutman dynamic audiences now consider iconic. For Stallone, it was vindication. For Douglas, it was a humiliation he never forgot. The two men never reconciled. What should have been a legendary collaboration instead became one of Stallone's most bitter Hollywood feuds. To this day, the memory of Kirk Douglas on the set of First Blood isn't one of respect. It's a reminder of how fragile even the biggest partnerships can be when ego meets immovable vision. Bruce Willis had been part of the Expendables from the very start, slipping into the role of the sly CIA operative Church. His presence, though not central to the plot, gave the ensemble a wry edge and a touch of gravitas. At first, he seemed aligned with Sylvester Stallone's vision, a brotherhood of legends working together not for the money, but for the sheer joy of honoring their shared legacy. Yet when talks began for The Expendables 3, that sense of loyalty unraveled almost overnight. Stallone wanted bigger, louder, grander, a sequel that would bring in even more icons, with names like Harrison Ford already circling. But when Willis's camp came to the table, the ask was staggering: $4 million for just 4 days of work. $1 million a day. The demand wasn't a negotiation, it was an ultimatum. For Stallone, who had built the Expendables on camaraderie and sacrifice, this wasn't just about money. It felt like betrayal, a rejection of everything the franchise stood for. Attempts at compromise went nowhere. Willis refused to budge. Stallone made his choice, he cut him loose. The script was rewritten, Church erased, and Harrison Ford stepped in with energy and professionalism that Stallone praised as the exact opposite of what Willis had brought. Then came the infamous Twitter eruption. On August 6, 2013, Stallone fired the first shot, Willis out, Harrison Ford in. Great news. Been waiting years for this. Hours later, he twisted the knife, branding his old friend with 2 damning words, greedy and lazy. The industry buzzed, and fans were stunned. Suddenly, Willis, the everyman hero of Die Hard, was being painted as the villain. While Willis kept silent, Stallone doubled down, positioning the Expendables not as a payday, but as his passion project. Anyone who couldn't respect that ethos had no place in the Brotherhood. The fallout left scars, Willis never returned, and though The Expendables 3 still performed, the absence was palpable. Yet time has a way of softening even the hardest grudges. In 2022, when Willis's family revealed his aphasia diagnosis and his retirement from acting, Stallone was one of the first to speak out. Posting photos of the two together over the decades, he wrote simply, "We go back a long way. Best to you and your wonderful family." Later, he admitted in interviews that the news cut him deeply. For all the bitterness, the bond between them was never entirely broken. The sting of greedy and lazy may never have been formally erased, but in Stallone's public show of support, the feud finally dissolved into something quieter, a reminder that even among Hollywood's toughest men, life's fragility eventually outweighs old battles. At the 1977 Golden Globes, Sylvester Stallone arrived as Hollywood's newest sensation. From an unknown, he had fought his way to glory with Rocky, earning nominations for Best Actor and Best Screenplay. This was supposed to be his crowning night, the culmination of an underdog story written in cinematic history. But fate had other ideas. Enter Arnold Schwarzenegger, a towering Austrian who stormed into the room with overwhelming presence, radiating confidence, his thick accent making every word sound like a proclamation. He walked straight up to Stallone, extended his hand, and introduced himself with the now iconic line, "Hi, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger, new talent of the year." Still basking in the glow of Rocky, Stallone dismissed him without a thought, seeing just another muscle-bound hopeful trying to break into Hollywood. Then came the awards. One by one, Rocky was shut out, failing to win a single category. To make matters worse, Schwarzenegger, the very man he had brushed aside, took home the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year. Stunned, Stallone could only watch as Arnold laughed every time Rocky was snubbed. For him, this was no ordinary slight, it was a direct insult, a challenge to his place in the room. Fury erupted. In a flash of anger, Stallone grabbed a giant bouquet of flowers and hurled it at Arnold's head, igniting one of Hollywood's most legendary rivalries. What followed was a 15-year war of egos, a cinematic arms race, and a spectacle of constant one-upmanship. Even Schwarzenegger would later confess on Radio Andy, "We hated each other. We were attacking each other, saying nasty things, doing stupid things." The 1980s became their battlefield. Stallone dominated early with the Rocky sequels and the rise of Rambo and First Blood, but Schwarzenegger, driven by ruthless ambition, refused to stay in Slice's shadow. Number 3, Kirk Douglas arrived on the set of First Blood. He didn't come as just an actor, he came as a force of will. Armed with his own vision rooted in the original novel, Douglas insisted that Rambo's story must end in death, shot by Troutman's hand. "Rambo must die. Rambo must die," he declared, a demand that instantly collided with Sylvester Stallone's carefully protected script. Stallone, who had already spent months refining the story into the foundation for a larger franchise, pushed back. "Not in this movie," he told him firmly. But Douglas wasn't a man who backed down easily. With the commanding presence of a general, he pushed for an ending that gave his character the emotional climax, caring little about sequels or franchise potential. Director Ted Kotcheff suddenly found himself trapped between two immovable forces, Stallone's unshakable creative control and Douglas's towering ego. The tension only deepened when Douglas began referring to himself in the third person on set. "Kirk doesn't say these lines. Kirk doesn't like these lines," he would announce, even demanding lines meant for other characters. He brought his own rewrites, determined to reshape the entire narrative around his vision. For Stallone, who had fought so hard for autonomy since Rocky, this was unbearable. Worse, Douglas's proposed ending, Troutman killing Rambo, felt like an insult to every Vietnam veteran. As Stallone later explained, every Vietnam vet who sees this ending goes, the only solution is death. Death is the only thing that awaits us. That's not the message I want to send. Douglas countered with a single defense, "Yes, but it's artistic." Eventually, Kotcheff had enough. He warned producers Mario Kassar and Andrew Vajna that Douglas was derailing the film both artistically and financially. Production was slowing, tempers were flaring, and the project risked collapse. When Kotcheff finally gave Douglas an ultimatum, accept the script as written or walk, Douglas stood firm in his trademark fashion, "Kirk's leaving." And with that, the Hollywood titan exited the project. It could have been a disaster. Instead, it became a strange blessing. Richard Crenna, brought in at the last minute, memorized lines on his way to the set and stepped into the role of Colonel Troutman. His understated warmth and quiet strength perfectly balanced Stallone's intensity, creating the dynamic that defined the Rambo franchise. For Stallone, the bitter clash with Kirk Douglas wasn't just another feud, it was a defining lesson in Hollywood power. Even legends could be wrong, and sometimes losing a star could save a film. By the time Bruce Willis, number 4, entered the story, the action genre had already crowned two kings, Sylvester Stallone, the unbreakable warrior of Rocky and Rambo, and Willis, the everyman cop-turned-hero immortalized in Die Hard. For an entire generation, they were the blueprint of toughness. And unlike many Hollywood rivalries, their relationship wasn't built on jealousy at first, it was genuine camaraderie. They belonged to an elite brotherhood of stars who had once dominated the global box office with sheer grit, sweat, and firepower. But as the 2000s rolled in, the tides of Hollywood shifted. The age of the lone, larger-than-life action hero was waning, giving way to ensembles, superheroes, and franchises powered more by CGI than muscle. For Stallone, this wasn't the end but an opportunity. He envisioned The Expendables, not just another action flick, but a resurrection of the old guard. It was to be a love letter to the genre, a gathering of the legends who had defined it, and a stage where their legacy could burn bright one more time. The gamble worked. The Expendables exploded into theaters, earning over $270 million and striking a deep chord with fans hungry for old-school action. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was proof that the icon still had fuel left in the tank. The sequel soared even higher, cementing the franchise as a rebirth for its aging heroes. For Stallone, it was vindication. For Willis, it was a chance to bask in the same glow. Together, they seemed unstoppable.